Hi guys, this is Deanne with Hope Point Mayo. If you hear rumblings in the background, it's my husband mulching leaves, so sorry about that. I have been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of researching, a lot of question asking, and just even observing doctors who kind of deal with pain on a regular basis. And I just wanted to share with you things that I've learned and that seem to be correlations there. But I'm learning that all this is just a matter of connecting dots. And so when I see a patient and maybe they have a really strong tongue tie, and I'll ask them, do you have a lot, tension in your head or your neck, or sometimes chronic headaches? They'll look at me and like, how did you know? And that can be very common. But then there are times where I see somebody who has the exact same anatomical features, and I'll ask them, I'm like, nope, no problem. And usually the ones who don't have that, generally speaking, are men. And there are times where I've had maybe one or two females who don't have any symptoms, even though it's very chronic tongue tie or tight tongue tie. They will still have like grinding of teeth and different features like that or symptoms, but not the pain. And so the last patient that answered that, generally speaking, she would have had a lot of pain and the typical. I just asked her, I said, are you generally like a pretty chill person and nothing really bothers you? And she laughed and she said, yeah, my husband jokes about it all the time, that nothing really bothers her. And so thinking about that, and then also knowing, just observing other patients, it seems like stress, which I think everybody knows this anyway, but stress like increases the pain level quite a bit. I have seen instances where you can have a person who maybe something dramatic has happened in their life, or trauma, whether it be like abuse, or just even a rough childhood where you're always on edge, or a personality where things bother you a lot, maybe like OCD, or just things bother you a lot. The way I can think about it is, if you have a child and there is danger around that child, your instinct is to hold them in and pull them in to protect them. And the same way can be with our bodies. We have fascia, it's connective tissue all around our bodies. It's like the protective mechanism is to tighten up and pull in to keep damage from happening. And so if there is pain somewhere, the fascia kind of locks in and works like a brace or a cast, or some kind of protective armor, to protect it. And anytime danger is suspected, it tightens even more. And it may not be like physical, like somebody's going to hit me in the arm, but even just emotional, when you think there could be danger there, or it just makes me stress, it's like things get tighter. And as things get tighter, more pain comes. And the hard thing about this is and I mentioned this in another video, but it becomes like a vicious cycle. And it's like year after year after year, more adds on, and the more it starts, the faster it gets. And then it's just going wild and short-circuiting in the mind and in the nervous system. And if you go see a doctor, they're like, well, it may be this. Well, the problem is it's not one thing. It can be this and this and this and this and all these different things on that. So if you try to remove one, that doesn't stop the cycle from going crazy. And in me thinking about this, it's like, well, what do you do? Because if it's this and this and this, where do you even know how to start? And there are several things that I've thought about and just learning in this. And one is, sometimes you just got to jump on that carousel and just start removing, just getting things and throwing them off one by one, as far as what can be the causes. The other thing is, if the body is like short-circuiting and is constantly firing the pain signals, we have to do something to stop that. And I actually have seen a doctor actually do a block in a patient that blocks the signal going up to the brain of pain. So it blocks the sympathetic nerve signal going up. So sympathetic is fight or flight, and that's where your body's like, it's in danger. And then you've got parasympathetic, where it's in rest and relax. And when he did the block, the patient was like, wow, I just feel like layers are going away. And then the parasympathetic started kicking in her body. But people who are in pain all the time generally don't know that parasympathetic, which has tremendous effects on mental and physical health. And so the key is trying to get switched from the sympathetic over to a parasympathetic. And everybody doesn't necessarily have access to getting blocks, which that would be ideal. And if I'm currently working on, or would like to plan to locate someone in my area that I can recommend patients to. But one of the things that are needed is that stress, the sympathetic, the firing. We've got to find a way to slow things down and get things down. Just kind of try to slow down that carousel. And I've just thought different ways of like what works for you. If you're a pain patient, or if you know someone is, we all have generally something that this totally relaxes our body, and that's what we need, our body and our mind. So for me, it would be like a hot bath or a hot tub. When I get in hot water, everything inside of me just releases. It just totally relaxes. And for some people, they don't like heat. And so it could be something else like getting a massage, sitting somewhere and maybe reading a book. This is gonna sound different, but I wrote my daughter a letter this past summer. And honestly, just thinking about what was going on around me, like the birds singing and the flowers blooming, and just doing that and writing it down, for me, it was very therapeutic. I thought I need to do this every Saturday. But it's so important at least one day a week to try to step away from everything and from life and the vicious cycle, to just try to stop. And I've thought, well, I wonder about like watching a Hallmark movie and doing a candle on a fire in the fireplace or something like that. But that could work. You could see, I mean, Hallmark movies are pretty, predictable, which I love about them. But any other kind of movie, if you're having to think and use your brain and analyze, it's kind of like, again, you're wanting to shut that down. You're just wanting to shut it all down. Your brain, your body, and just put it in full relaxation. And one of the words we like to use is embrace. To embrace, I think that's the word, everything. I try to do this every night before I go to bed. It's amazing how quick it puts me to sleep when I start at the top of my head and just release every single muscle. So you just need to get yourself in a position. This should be every evening too, right before bed. Just try to release everything, and not just in your body, but in your mind. And like one day a week do that. And I'm convinced like one weekend a month, for women especially, just to get away from everything and just calm everything. So yeah, just try to find something that completely relaxes you, and that can maybe help to get your body from that vicious cycle. Maybe start slowing it down. Just try to be intentional about it, but you're gonna have to stick with it. That being said, there are several things that can like tip things over. Like I know for me, when I'm really tired, if I'm driving and I'm really tired, it's like I start hallucinating. Or when I'm really tired, especially when my kids were younger, it was really hard to not get really aggravated with them, or just, burst out or something. And it is so much harder to deal with stress and people and life when we are tired. And that can also send our minds in just that cycle. I know for me, when I am tired and I'm in a crowd, I just kind of like almost want to start crying and shut down. And I'm very much an extrovert person. That just sends me over the edge. So another thing, so it can be sleep related issues, whether it be sleep apnea or just where your body's needing oxygen, and so it comes out of that deep sleep and a light sleep, and you just stay in mostly light sleep all night so that you won't run out of oxygen, or get to where you're holding your breath. And so then you're not getting restorative sleep, so you're tired all the time, so then you're stressed all the time, so then everything is like 100 times bigger. Another aspect could be thyroid, and I'm learning more about that, reading a book on that right now. And honestly, there are lots of connections between sleep related breathing disorders and oxygen and thyroid, hypothyroidism, and thyroid disease. And I am checking into that more. I'm doing research. I'm looking at research studies and stuff. There are huge connections, and I do have some input on that, or research that I'm doing that actually makes sense in it all. Like oxygen issues can cause hypothyroidism. I'm not stating that as a doctor. There's just some research I've done that if A equals B and B equals C, then therefore A equals C. But we'll get into that later. But anyway, if you have potentially hypothyroidism, that can also make things very stressful. So it's something to check into. Your sleep, just try to do what you can to get the sleep that you need. If you think you might have sleep apnea, if you snore, it might be worth getting tested. Or you can watch my previous videos on sleep. If none of that goes through, you might consider, if you haven't already, have your thyroid checked. And it doesn't just have to be adults have hypothyroidism, children can have it too. I just had my son tested today for hypothyroidism. We'll see what happens there. So, I think that's about it that I wanted to say on this. But, oh, one more thing. As far as the relaxation, we've talked about this in other videos, but another thing, so you want to find something that for you just works to just totally relax you. Just kicks in that parasympathetic. What you're trying to do is kick in the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, total relaxation. And one other way of doing that is breathing deep. And the way that works is when you breathe deep or belly breathe, when your belly, you know, kind of moves in and out, kind of pulses, it actually triggers the vagus nerve, which is down around the diaphragm. And the vagus nerve triggers the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. I believe you can look somewhere on videos or on posts where I have it's called the 4-7-8 breathing method. That's something that you can do to try to kick that in, slow the breathing down, because our fast mouth breathing is stress breathing. We're trying to learn to breathe through our nose, which is what myofunctional therapy is about, training you to breathe through your nose, which is slow breathing, which is rest and relaxation breathing, and then also trigger that vagus nerve, which again kicks in the parasympathetic. Because when we're in the stress, when we're in the pain, that just keeps us in that because we're always on guard mode, and we need to learn to relax, embrace, breathe deep. See you later.